Here is one of a series of talks by spiritual leader Lola McDowell Lee, spanning 2 decades from the early 70s through the 90s. Lola was a Zen Roshi, whose Rinzai lineage included Dr. Henry Platov and renowned Zen master Shigetsu Sasaki. Lola was a religious scholar as well as an ordained Christian minister. While the talks are focused mainly on Zen and Buddhism, Lola drew on many spiritual traditions, including those of Jesus, Plato, Lao Tzu, the Hindu Vedas, Meister Eckhart, and Gurdjieff.
Chi Sing Tzu was a trainer of fighting cocks for King Swain. And he was training a very fine bird. The king kept asking if the bird were ready for combat. "Not yet," said the trainer. "He's full of fire. He's ready to pick a fight with every other bird. He is vain and he is confident of his own strength." And after 10 days, the king asked him again, and he answered, "Not yet." He flares up when he hears another bird crow. After 10 more days, "Not yet." He still gets that angry look and ruffles his feathers. Again 10 days. And the trainer said now he is nearly ready. When another bird crows, his eye doesn't even flicker. He stands immobile like a bird of wood. He is a mature fighter. Other birds will take one look at him and run. Yeah. Our little monk that we talk about so much, he one day was very disturbed, very perplexed, and he came to see his counselor. Now in Japan, they have, one has ordinarily 3 roshis, and one of these roshis is a personal counselor. You have a roshi for interview and a roshi for counseling, and then there's another roshi. Anyway, he comes to this roshi and he says, "I am in very deep trouble. I've got a problem. I'm not just a blind believer. I'm a very rational, logical man." "So," asked the counselor, "what's the trouble?" "Well, just this morning I saw a mouse sitting on the great book of Buddha's sutras, and I am disturbed. If the book of Buddha's sutras cannot protect itself against an ordinary mouse, how can it protect me? My faith is shattered. I cannot believe anymore. What should I do?" "Well," said the counselor, "the logical step," and you're a logical, reasonable man, "the logical step would be to start believing in the mouse, because you have seen with your own eyes that the mouse is more powerful than the Buddhist sutras. You know, man has this will to power. And so there's no way to escape from our logic." And the monk was convinced, and he started worshiping the mouse. But it wasn't very long before he was in trouble again. One day he saw a cat jump the mouse. This time he didn't go to the counselor because he had the key to the situation in his own hand. He just started worshiping the cat. It was more powerful. However, it wasn't very long, and he was in trouble again. A dog chased the cat. So he started to worship the dog. Then one day, he saw his wife beat the dog. Now he came to the counselor again. And this time he said, this is too much. I can worship a mouse, I can worship a cat, I can worship a dog, but not my wife, But, said the counselor, this is how our reason moves. You have to accept it. So he finally persuaded the monk, and he went and got a picture of his wife without anybody knowing it. And he went inside his room, and he locked the door, and he worshiped her. Just don't tell her. Just don't tell her. See? He worshiped her in secrecy and in privacy. And things were going well. Then one day, the monk's wife came running to the counselor, saying, something is very wrong. We thought he was a little crazy when he started to worship the mouse, and then the cat, and then the dog, and then for a few days he's been doing something secret inside his room. He locks the door, and no one can come in. But today, just out of curiosity, I looked through the keyhole. And the Roshi asked, what was he doing? The wife says, you come and see. See? So he went with her, and he peeped through the keyhole. And the monk was standing naked before the mirror, worshiping himself. Yeah? So the counselor knocked on the door, and he asked, about how come now? And the monk says, but this is a very natural conclusion. This morning I had an argument with my wife, and I won. See? I am more powerful than she. So now I am worshiping myself. Right, huh? This is how the ego mind moves. If you listen to it, it will convince you by some very subtle arguments that you are the center of the world, that you are the most significant one in the world, that you are in one way or another. It will find some way, one way, in which you're superior. All it needs is one. Huh? The ego mind raises doubts about everything else. So, until one sits for meditation, the thinking mind is not going to raise any doubts about the ego. Somehow, the ego reigns supreme. Now, whenever the ego feels that it should surrender, let go, in come the doubts. What am I doing? Surrender? Surrender to what? To a teacher? To God? To love? What am I doing? I'm going to lose myself. Yeah. So, be alert. Control yourself. Control everything. Otherwise, all will be lost. So the ego resists. In the Old Testament, there is the statement, you cannot see God alive. When you see God, the ego isn't. There is no wall. There's no barrier. Then you see God. This ego of ours, do you ever take it in hand and look at it? You will see that it's not porous. It has no space for anything except itself. When God is present, there's no space for anybody else or anything else. And so with the ego. And yet we have this, we think of surrender. We think of let go. And, we yearn so to know this is. We want to attain, and the ego fights it all. Ego is always ready to fight. Any excuse to argue. Arguing is its fuel. Sometimes it's got lots of fuel, and it feels very powerful. It's very energetic. And boy, how good you strut. It needs this fuel. If not, it's afraid. The ego is not fearless. The ego, we could say, is a human mechanism, like a device. It's a function, so we can operate in society. But having it in hand, so to speak, we have to manage it. We have to maintain it. And we spend lots of time managing and maintaining this imitation self. Now, what about the true self? Where is that? If for 24 hours you lived an egoless existence, well, you would be surprised, you will be amazed, and you will be very mystified. And then comes the ego back in place. And now the question, what happened to that ego which you had been carrying around, and it appeared again so abruptly? Where had it gone? It's very perplexing. Now, existence goes on perpetually. It's eternal, It's never exhausted. And deep down, like everything else in existence, you have this eternal energy. And it can't be exhausted. Remember that in the middle of the sit, Eternal energy is yours. We need fuel for the body. If you don't eat and drink, you'll die. If you don't breathe, you'll die. That's fuel for the body. Constant fuel is necessary. But for consciousness, what fuel? What keeps it alive? Consciousness. There you sit with it. What keeps it there, For the ego, we need fuel. Our mentalizings and our emotions. But for consciousness, what? What fuel? Consciousness is non-ending. It has no beginning and it hasn't any end. So always the admonition, become one with consciousness. And then fear is gone. And the ego is gone. The ego, the fear, the greed, all go. When you come to consciousness, and then consciousness returns to its source. Now this ego of ours, each one of us having one, is very fragile. We don't usually think of it that way, but it's very fragile. It's always on the verge of dying. Anybody can kill it. Just a gesture, just a look, and it's such a blow, it's ready to die, To maintain itself, this ego, it builds a few little islands wherein it says, here is bravery. It's fearful because death can happen at any moment, In love, death can happen. In prayer, death can happen. In meditation, death can happen. If you look at a rose without thinking, the ego dies. So fragile, so flimsy. So we need islands of being brave. After all, I'm not a coward. This helps the ego. This is how we manage it. This is how we maintain it. Not stopping to realize that being brave and being a coward are two sides of one coin. So now, what is one to be? Brave, coward. Two sides of one coin. Two sides of one hand. It's like the soldier, he was fighting on the front, and he got very scared. He got so frightened that he started running to the rear. And one of the officers stopped him and asked him, Yella, what are you doing? Where are you going? The battle is on. You're supposed to be up there. Are you a coward running away? And the man was so frightened, he didn't bother to answer. He just kept on going. And now the officer's running after him. Why don't you answer me? Don't you know who I am? I am your general. And the soldier stopped, and he looked at him, and he gasped, The general? My God, I'm safe. I'm that far back. Huh? Yeah. Neither coward nor brave. Neither one. Then what? You don't choose either one of them. Not brave and not coward. Well, there's another possibility. And that's fearlessness. That's neither stance. It's just fearlessness. A fearless person is one who has come to know the deathless within himself. He's come to understand the inner. He has come to know consciousness. He has come to know the immortal. He isn't divided into these opposites of brave and coward. No. So, think of it. What would you call a man like Buddha? Or a man like Chuang Tzu? Or a man like Lao Tzu? Would you call him brave or would you call him coward? Well, you can't put him in either pigeonhole. That's not for people like that. No. So if it's non-ego with a silent mind, there's no language. And in that frame of reference, there is this old koan, If you meet a Roshi on the road, how do you greet him? Do you say hello? Do you not say hello? If you meet a man of high rank on the street, how do you greet him? Interesting that, huh? Yeah. Chi Tsing Tzu was a trainer of fighting cocks for King Hussein. And he was training a very fine bird. And the king, he's very anxious. He kept asking if the bird was ready for combat. And this is one of the stories from Chuang Tzu, out of China. And this Chi, this trainer, was a man of Tao. In China and in Japan and in Ceylon and in Korea, all the Orient there, they use all sorts of things, everything that they set their hand to as stepping stones to oneself. See? So there we have the archery, and we have painting and calligraphy, swordsmanship, tea ceremony. even training birds to fight. And at one time it was very popular in China. It may still be, I don't know. But it was very popular at one time. But whatever comes along in our living, in our day-to-day existence, they used it for the inner training. Now we can do the same thing. You know, we're just a little too careless. But the king, too, was careless, and he was interested in competition. He was interested in this, that his bird should win. And it's kind of like if one is playing like children play. Children are interested in playing, in the play itself. In a game, as an adult, we become interested in results, not in the play so much. It's become a business. Results. So from this very outset, Qi has one type of interest, and the king has another type of interest. Qi is training a very fine bird, and the king keeps asking if the bird is ready. And Qi says, not yet. He's full of fire. You know, the king should have asked right then, well, if he's full of fire, that's what we need. When you're full of fire, you fight. Yeah. You have the possibility of winning when you're full of fire. So this king must have been rather puzzled when the bird isn't ready, but it's full of fire. What kind of trainer is this Qi? You know, keeps saying, not yet, not yet. You know, he's ready to pick a fight with every other bird. He's constantly ready to do battle. Which means, in Qi's mind, he's afraid. He's constantly ready for battle. And that's a cover-up for his fear. He is not ready. When we fight and when we argue, you know, what we want is to prove. We prove the ego right. My ego is righter than yours. But think about it. A man who is truly wise will never in any way be searching for an opportunity to prove that he is wise. Never. What for? You don't like what he does? So what? He doesn't have to prove that he's wise. And a fool, they say, is always in search of a way to prove that he is wise. And so he's a fool. You know, when somebody's in love, when you're in love, you know, your whole being says it. The way you say something expresses it. The way you move expresses it. The way you look expresses it. You know, love is such a vital phenomenon. You can't hide it. You know, it's like a fire inside. It glows. When you're in love, you glow. You know? And when someone falls in love, you can see this fire. It comes from the eyes, you know. That one is no longer the same person. Something has transformed him. A fire is happening. A newness has come upon him. And he walks, you know, kind of with a lilt and a dancing step. When you're in love, even talking to a stranger on the street is different. You're happy to talk to strangers. Yeah? You're different. You pay attention differently. If it's not present, you try to project it. Yeah. Not yet, said the trainer. Not yet. He's full of fire. So he's got fear inside and the fire is outside, and that is his projection. He's ready to pick a fight with every other bird unnecessarily. Whatever crosses his path, he's going to argue. He's ready. He's vain and seemingly very confident. So, not yet. Well, you know, we all know what it's like to have the ego strutting around. Huh? Sure. And confidence, people, they say, I'm confident. And confidence, like so many other aspects of this, always saying, I'm confident, I'm confident, I'm confident. A really confident person is not aware of confidence. Just as he isn't aware of fearlessness. It's just there. When something is real, you just forget it. Do you remember that you are breathing? Well, if something goes wrong with it, yeah. But when everything's all right, it's like when the shoe fits, the foot's forgotten. Confidence. When you're really confident, confidence is forgotten. When a man is fearless, coward and brave are forgotten. You know that of yourself. There was once a great connoisseur. He was a wine taster. And a friend invited him to his house, because he had some very old, very rare, very valuable wine. And he wanted to show this man his collection. He wanted his appreciation. So he gave him some of this very old, valuable wine to taste. And this connoisseur tasted it, and he remained silent. He didn't say anything. He didn't even say it was good. He didn't say it was fine. And so this friend was hurt. This very expensive, very valuable, rare wine, So he was hurt. So what he did now was give him another glass of very ordinary, rather coarse wine. What's another word for coarse? Rough? Yeah. And the man tasted it, this connoisseur, and he says, oh, very good, it's fine. Now this friend was very puzzled with this, and he said to him, I gave you some of the rarest, most valuable wines, and you remain silent. And yet to this ordinary, cheap, coarse wine, you say very good. I don't understand. And the connoisseur said, for the first wine, nobody is required to say anything. It speaks for itself. But for the second wine, something needs to be said. You've got to praise it somehow, otherwise it will feel hurt. After 10 days, he answered again, not yet. He flares up when he hears another bird crow. When any bird is crowing, why do we feel it is meant for me? Why is always the challenge for me? It's as if we look at the world as if it were an enemy against me. Now, which only goes to show that you haven't stumbled across the source. You don't yet know consciousness. Someone steps on your toes and immediately you're ready to fight. The ruffles feathered, and don't you know who I am? You're ready to fight. Don't you know who I am? And that's a silly question. It's a silly attitude. If you don't know yourself who you are. And again, 10 days go by, and this time the trainer says, now he's nearly ready. When another bird crows, his eyes do not even flicker. He stands immobile like a bird of wood. He is a mature fighter. Other birds will take one look at him and run. He is a mature bird. He is mature. There is now no need for him to fight. He doesn't need to ruffle his feathers. When the warrior is really there, fearless, what is the need to fight? His presence is enough. Yeah. And this is what happened. The bird was put into combat, and he just stood there, immobile. He didn't ruffle his feathers, and he didn't crow. He just stood there. And other birds came up puffing bravely, arrogant and vain. And they looked at this bird. They didn't move. And they came up again, Not quite normal. So they tried to make him angry. But his eyes wouldn't even flicker. They jumped up and down, and they crowed, and it didn't have any effect. And then finally they began to shake within, and they began to tremble, and they backed off, because this bird is not natural. This bird is a kind of a stranger. This bird does not belong to us. We wash our hands of him. They got the message. He was fearless. Happens now and then, This is sort of like the training of a samurai. To fight with no anger. Neither coward nor brave. To go into combat with no anger. There was at one time a Mohammedan caliph, and he was in battle. There was a war going on. And he had been fighting the enemy for 30 years. It's a lifetime of war. Then one day, the enemy, the leader of the enemy group, fell off his horse, and this caliph, he jumped down from his horse with his spear in his hand. And in just 1 second, he's right there, and he's going to thrust the spear through the heart of this enemy, and the man spat on him. And that spear stopped. This caliph, he touched his face, and he got up and he said, "Tomorrow we start again." And this puzzled this enemy. I have been waiting for this moment for 30 years. You have been waiting for this moment for 30 years. I had hoped it would happen to me, that I would be the one with the spear, and I would be on your chest. And then the thing would be finished. The opportunity didn't come to me, it came to you. You could have finished me. What's the matter with you? And the caliph said, this is not an ordinary war. I have taken a vow that I will fight you without anger. But just for that moment, anger arose. When you spat, I was angry, and it all became personal. I wanted to kill you. The ego was right there. For the past 30 years, this hasn't been a problem. We're fighting for a cause. It wasn't personal. So tomorrow, we start again. Well, actually, the war didn't start again because the enemy listened to this and became a friend. Because he said, teach me. I would like to know how to fight without anger. To be fearless. We all practice meditation, more or less. And maybe we've practiced it long enough over a period of years so that we think the meditation now is pretty near to perfect. You got it down pat. You know how to sit, you know how to get up, and you know how to bow, and you know how to sit down again. What do you think is perfect meditation? What is perfect? When the effort is dropped. When the meditation is a non-action, a non-doing. And then we have the old saying, easy is right. Again, you know, when the shoe fits. This trainer said that the bird was nearly ready because he had practiced. In the beginning, for meditation, we all have to practice. We have to practice and practice and practice. Otherwise, that spontaneity isn't going to come. It isn't going to come because you snap your fingers, you know. I guess you know that by now. The attention has to go down into the hidden depths. So we practice, and we practice so totally that we are almost exhausted. And then you drop all the practice and you just watch. But be careful you don't drop too soon. You know, when you drop, you're the witness. The practice is really like, you know what a coil spring is? And you know, you push it like this and you push it like this and it all goes together. This is the practice. You're pushing on this coil spring, the mind, and you push it up against the wall and you push it to the very end. And like any spring, when you push it to the very end and then you let it go, it uncoils with a jump. It just springs. So the mind, you know, pushed like a coil against the wall. You push. That's a practicing. You go on pushing and pushing and pushing, and then you drop. And then it is as if you jump. You leap out of the ego mind, and you're free of it. When you're free of it, then there is moment-to-moment living. There is moment-to-moment thanksgiving. There is moment-to-moment here now. And I think we all know that here now is the day of the Lord. Yeah. Okay. And now, may the peace and the power that passeth all understanding hold us and keep us in the love of the Christed consciousness while we are seemingly separate one from another. And I thank you very much.
If you find Lola's talks valuable, more will be posted in weeks to come.